Life After the Rams with Colin Gibson.
Welcome to episode 11 of Life After the Rams. Today we're joined by Bobby Davison, the fearless, sharp-finishing forward whose goals made him a hero at the baseball ground. A player who embodied Derby's fight and fire, Davison reflects on his journey through the club, the people who shaped him, and the life he's built since hanging up his boots. This episode is brought to you in association with RamsTrust, the Derby County Supporters Society, established to promote good governance and fan engagement. They welcome new membership applications from all supporters. Just visit ramstrust.org.uk/membership for further details.
Life After the Rams with Colin Gibson.
Bobby, great to chat to you. And now, here we go. I'm not going to ask you about individual goals because I remember trying to do that once before and you gave me blank looks, so we'll avoid individual goals. But
to be fair, Colin, I've been sat here for the last hour trying to think. Right, if you ask me about goals, I need to sort that out, and I don't remember them. To be fair,
it staggers me how you cannot remember goals. You scored 106 for Derby.
I know, but it's the same in training. Training, you know, when you score in training sessions and everything, you sort of don't remember. And I always say I'm not trying to be clever when I say this to anybody on interviews. I just say it was my job. So, you know, it was like passing the ball to, you know, to John Gregory or Gary Whittlewhite. Just one of them things that you had to do.
I tell you what, the fans remember them.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Well, you know, that's what they pay the money for, don't they, to watch their team win. So, you know, if they remember, you know, goals that I've scored, you know, at the baseball ground or away games, then that's fantastic for them. That's what they pay the money for. It's just that, I'm never trying to be clever about this. I'm just saying that was my job. So score a goal, then move on to the next one.
Well, you did your job pretty well because nobody scored more goals for Derby in the 1980s. So that's not a bad record.
Yeah, but you've got to understand as well, you know, I'm saying, you know, I did my job, but I had a hell of a lot of help with, you know, certainly 11 other players on the pitch, you know, at the same time. So, you know, I just finished them off. You know, other people made these goals for me, which was fantastic. It was just my job to get on the end and finish them off. And, you know, you've got to go back and say, well, I do anyway, and say, yeah, it's a team performance. You know, never have I, you know, ran the full length of the pitch and took, you know, all the opposition on and scored a goal. I've always had to have, you know, passes from my teammates.
You got all the glory, mind.
I wasn't involved in that in terms of, you know, that's up to fans if they like the goal or not. And I'm sure that's because it was for their team. Didn't matter whoever scored it, as long as the team won.
The times at Derby, I think to say were interesting is an understatement because you joined at a time when the club was really starting to hit the buffers and you left after the team had returned to the top division. It was never dull at Derby, was it?
It was never dull, but it was just, you know, fantastic for me coming out of, you know, non-league football, get me out of, you know, I just finished 4 years in the shipyards, went to Huddersfield Town and then got a fantastic move to Derby County, which, you know, I was absolutely delighted. I think, you know, football-wise, fantastic, playing for a club, you know, with such great history, you know, with some fantastic players over the years. I think the biggest issue is when, you know, players move to different clubs or join clubs was obviously family, and you know, we sort of lucky that it was just me and Jill, my wife, but it was hard for her to move away from her family from the northeast. But you know, she did it, and you know, I think we loved that time at Derby.
I guess it was a formative time for you as well. as I guess, in a way, a young lad starting to grow up, become a family man as well. So we always think of you as the footballer, and I guess we don't tend to think too much about you as I'll use this term, as the human being.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of them issues you get with sort of being in the public eye all the time, don't you? I think people don't see the other side of it. I think people just see the work side, if you like. And I was delighted because them years at Derby County just sort of they went so quick, but it was fantastic for me. Coming out the shipyards, then playing professional football, which is just what I wanted to do, and having a little bit of success in terms of doing what I loved, scoring goals. But I think Jill, my wife, enjoyed herself. Made a lot of friends down in Derby. My daughter was born there, so we got to look back with fond memories.
How about this? It's 39 years since you left Derby. Okay, you did come back for a short time. I must have left
when I was 10 then.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's frightening when you think about those sorts of numbers.
Well, it is, and we always look back, me and Jill, on our daughter's nearly in her 40s now, so yeah, it was a long time ago. But having said that, I always look for Derby County results every weekend, if it's a midweek game, always look out for them, because great memories, met some fantastic people, and still stay in touch with quite a few of them.
There was a real camaraderie. They talk about team spirit, where they talk about that, to use a Robert Maxwell term, very glibly at times. But actually, that team, particularly sort of 86, maybe 85 to about 86, 87, you really were a band of brothers, weren't you?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. I think on the pitch and off the pitch as well. I think not just the boys, the players. We obviously, as you know, we go out, have food, have a beer together. But also, most times on a Saturday after a game, we go out with the wives as one big family. I always look back and just say it was fantastic times. Loved it. Loved everything about the football club, about the city. Great, fantastic memories.
Mind you, if the Arsenal manager Terry Neal had his way, you might not have been a Derby player.
Yeah, that's true. I have to say, I'm not trying to be clever about this, but going down and having the trial, I know. Well, my wife Jill straight away was saying, "Do we have to move to London if you get?" And I went, "Well, it's up to you." I says, "We can stay at Derby, or if they want us, what do you think?" She went, "I don't want to move to London." And to be fair, I was in the same. I wasn't sure about. I wanted to move to London, and now go to London all the time because I thought the grandkids live down there. Crazy.
Yeah, the way that it happens sometimes. But people might look, Bobby, and say, hang on, why did you choose a second division struggling club like Derby and not a club like Arsenal, apart from London?
Yeah, I think the reason being is, I just wanted, because I started late, I was started in my 20s after I'd finished, the shipyards. I just wanted to play, and play every Saturday or midweek. And I thought at times, would you get into the Arsenal team? Would you be just a squad player, or like a Derby where you sort of more or less, if you put in your performances and play like you could do, you're going to play most games. I think that was a big issue as well, and obviously moving to London was a massive big issue.
So Derby it was. Peter Taylor was your manager to start off with. And it was, as I say, difficult times. As seems to happen with Derby, they always hit financial trouble somewhere along the way. And I think it was in the October of 1983 that it was reported players weren't being paid. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I don't think it lasted that long. I think, but I do remember players not getting paid. But at the same time as well, my own stupid self signed for Derby and just took what Derby offered and just accepted it. And that really, me and Jill me and my wife had a chat about that and just went, that was a bad move. We should have tried to get what we really wanted, but because I wanted to play and sign for Derby, I just, whatever I had to put on the table, I just signed, and probably regretted that a little bit when, some of the other players start talking about what they were getting and earning, and I'm going, wow.
So the heart ruled ahead on that one.
Yeah, it certainly did, but that was my fault. I just wanted to play football and. Going to Derby, the baseball ground. Wow, it was fantastic for me to see the football club, baseball ground, and when it was full of supporters. That's little me from up the northeast, where I used to go and watch Sunderland play and Newcastle play, and always wanted to play in a big stadium like that. I get the chance to go to the baseball ground and play in front of more or less a full house every week.
Well, Derby got through those difficult times in 84, and I guess the fortunes of the club were revived and changed by the arrival of Arthur Cox. What difference did he make to you as a player, as an individual?
Looking back, I think what Arthur did was that I sensed that he could bring in players from different clubs, sell the football club to, if you like, for want of a better phrase, better players. He just always had me on my guard that any time now he could drop me, leave me out, sell me, or so I had to put in a shift every time I played for Arthur, and of course in training as well. So it was sort of a scary thing that I was scared that he was going to bring in somebody who would take my place. Do you understand where I'm going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Always have you on your toes. You had quite a few different striking partners. I'm just thinking in your time, Kevin Wilson, Trevor Christie, Phil G, to name three. But I guess those
John Richards as well, didn't we?
Yes, for a short time. Yeah. But they changed, but you stayed because, without wishing to blow smoke up your bottom and whatever, you could score goals. However much Derby might have been struggling, you knew how to find the net to do your job.
Well, yeah, and I was, fortunate that, it wasn't always down to me. It was down to my teammates who supplied me with crosses and, through passes and where I could score goals. So obviously I've got to say that a lot of all my goals have come from my teammates.
You mentioned John Richards, but the first one that really springs to mind where Derby was starting to make progress was Kevin Wilson, and the two of you were quite similar in build and stature, but the two of you just hit it off, didn't you?
Well, I think my tash was better than his.
I'm sure Kevin will have something to say about that.
No, I think Kevin, we're from them days, we're still friends now. We spoke yesterday. I think what happened was a Chelsea Football Club came and were interested in a striker, and I think it was a case of whoever Arthur and Roy were going to decide who they wanted to keep. I know they wanted to keep both of us, but they had to let one of us go. And it was a case of they probably threw a coin up and went heads or tails and said, like, Kevin, you're going to get sold and we'll keep Bob. Or it could have worked the other way where it fell on tails, I went and he stayed. I think that's how close it was. I think, we're very, very similar, myself and Kevin. And I think it was a case of I don't think Arthur and Roy were sure who should stay and who should go.
Well, it was Kevin that went. He was sold to Ipswich Town, I think, on New Year's.
So, yeah,
he was sold to Ipswich Town on, I think it was New Year's Day, 1985, somewhere around about then. And then another striking partner comes in as Arthur Cox starts to go out and, as you say, attract players with the following season in mind. And a guy called Trevor Christie came in, who, to me, always seemed quite a laid-back type of character. What was he like?
I totally agree. Trevor was very, very laid back. Firstly, super player. Great partner for myself where, worked his socks off, very brave, technically very good with his left foot. His right foot, not so good, but his left foot is very, very good. Good in the air, held the ball up really well, and it was ideal. That I think was a great move by the football club to bring him in. If Kevin had stayed and I had gone, it would have been exactly the same with Kevin and Trevor. Fortunately for me, it was myself and Trevor, and he was a great partner for myself. Absolutely fantastic. I know every time a long ball got knocked up to him, he'd either hold on to it, flick it on, but you could trust him. I thought he was fantastic.
Well, in the 85-86 season, the two of you scored your fair share of goals, and you probably will remember this game against Rotherham on a Friday night. And, well, apparently you were fouled and it led to a penalty, but nobody's ever quite given a decent description of why it was a penalty. Can you recall?
I don't remember that. Honestly, I don't know.
Friday night, baseball ground, May 1986. And you've got to win. I mean, there is the backstop of going to Darlington the following week. But you've got to win, having blown it against Doncaster the previous weekend. You win at Swansea in the week. Trevor Christie scores a penalty. Anyway, 2-1 against Rotherham on the Friday night. Derby get the lead. A young lad called Phil G comes on, scores a goal. Do you remember the equaliser for Rotherham? Mark Wallington didn't exactly covering himself in glory.
Wally had that tendency to do that now and again, didn't he? But again, certainly in training, Wally had a thing about not letting me score. So it was fantastic for me because I knew he was testing me all the time and not just letting me score. So that helped, myself keep my concentration, and that I wasn't doing shooting sessions and he was just letting me score, because I've seen that happen with goalkeepers and other strikers. So I nothing bad to say against Wally. But he was a great goalkeeper. Yes, now and again he'll drop a clanger, but he was super off the pitch as well.
Yeah, he certainly was.
You could chat to him anytime, jokingly or serious. Either way, he was fantastic to go and have a chat to.
Absolutely. Okay, so back to the Friday night against Rotherham. So you're fouled, penalty, and Trevor Christie has to step up on that famous baseball ground quagmire and score a pretty important spot kick. Now, do you remember this?
Did he score?
Yes, he did score, yes. Graham Richards described it on the commentary as Trevor Christie was as cool as custard. Anyway, Derby won 2-1, and you get promoted to the next division. And
Colin, I thought every time I watched Trevor take a penalty, I thought he looked so cool. So cool. Very, very similar to Archie Gemmell when Archie took penalties. Our friend who's just passed away, John Robertson, when he took penalties, they all looked that it was just a matter of fact. Let's score these all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next season, Arthur Cox lets Trevor Christie go to Manchester City, and Derby get Mark Lillis in his place. But Mark gets injured early on, so the young lad who's come in right at the end of the season, Phil G, is thrown in to partner yourself. And the two of you absolutely knocking the goals that season as you take the second division by storm. And that really was some team. You think of Rob Hindmarch and Ross McLaren at the back, John Gregory running the midfield, Geraint Williams, young Welsh midfielder coming through, Gary Micklewhite. That was some team.
Some players, I think, I'm not so sure Greg's got the credit that he deserved, because he had absolutely everything, and you can see, when he's come from QPR, that he's 6 foot on, he's good in the air, his technical ability fantastic, his fitness levels are great, and he had that nasty streak as well that I sort of picked up on everything good about John Gregory. Sort of I took into how I performed. I thought he was a fantastic player, John Gregory. As well as the other guys that you mentioned. Gary Micklewhite, another one from QPR. You look at Gary, you talk to Gary. Butter wouldn't melt, but he had that nasty streak as well, didn't he? As a winger, he would sort fullbacks out. Technically, very, very good. Would always produce a cross. I think every time Gary got the ball and he's took on the defender, me personally, I know that he's going to produce. I can make my runs if I'm going near post or central, knowing that Gary's going to produce a cross. And there was something about them two from QPR that stayed with me for all these years, and certainly in my football career, that I always looked and went, them two had that nasty streak. I'm not saying I was nasty. I'm just saying that we had that streak, and I took it on board. And when I played, look after myself and be fair, try and be fair, and not trying to hurt people, but just make sure that you don't lose out on 50-50s.
There's a bit of an argy-bargy match I seem to remember that you were involved with. I can't remember the name of the goalkeeper for Sheffield Wednesday now.
Goalkeeper's nightmare, because they come out and they put their 6 studs down the back of you, or down your thighs and everything. They used to get away with murder back then, goalkeepers. I think they always wanted, when they came, instead of catching, they wanted to punch. So a lot of the times, they follow through. But that was part of the game, wasn't it?
So you get into the first division, and not long after being in the first division, and you said this earlier on, that you never quite know when the manager might say, right, it's time for you to go. And that's what happened not long into Derby's journey into the first division. Arthur Cox presumably called you in and said, we've had a bid from Leeds United.
I think just before that, when I signed the new contract, I was told then that probably would be the last one at Derby. Arthur, I don't think it was just on Arthur. I think Roy would have a big say in it. Rightly so. I think Roy McFarlane was fantastic for the football club. I think he helped Arthur Cox a hell of a lot as well. I enjoyed listening to Roy. I enjoyed Roy's training sessions and everything about him. When you look back and how good a player he was. So I think Roy and Arthur, and rightly so, I have to admit that they look and go, right, we need to improve. Where can we improve? We need to improve up top as with strikers, better striker or a different striker. And you've got to take it on the chin and say, yeah, I've tried and give 100% all the time, every time I played, even if I wasn't performing that well, I was always giving everything. But time comes when you've got to let certain players go. I found out this when I went to Hungary, and I had some fantastic players who were coming to the end of their career, and I had to explain to them that you're at the stage in your career where we've got to bring players in to take your place, and you've got to move out. And I think that's what happened with yourself at Derby. Arthur and Roy got their heads together, then it was a case of that had to move me out. Which, at times you go, I want to stay, but I think sometimes you just got to take it on the chin and go. And to be fair, to go to Leeds, who are growing up, I supported Leeds. It was one of them where I'm happy to go to Leeds.
Well, you went to Leeds, got promoted, back into the top division. And obviously Leeds then went on to be Football League champions. But then Derby, who started to struggle again, came calling and wanted you on loan. So you come back on loan, score goals. But is this where your memories and thoughts of Derby maybe get a little tainted by what happened that time?
Well, I think the same thing happened at Leeds. So I'm at Leeds, Billy Bremner signs me, then Howard comes in, we win promotion and everything. Then Howard is the one who got me in the office and said, "You're out of contract, I'm going to give you a 2-year contract, but that'll be the end of it, because I'll be, I think, getting on to 30 or something then." Derby come knocking again. Howard pulls me in and said, Derby's come knocking, want you on loan with a view. He says, "But I'm not sure that they're going to take the view of taking you on. I think they're just going to use you for a month or 2 months, however long you're going to stay there." He says, "So when you get down there and in the office, make sure that you sign a contract that's going to last for another year or 18 months. And to be fair to Howard, he sort of spot on, wasn't he? I went to Derby, then played, I don't know how many games, but then there's a door game.
Did that change your view of Arthur Cox, what happened when you came back on loan? The fact that you came to Derby, scored the goals, there'll be a contract, but it never materialised.
Yeah, but I think I sort of understood that that's the way it works in football. I think, sometimes it doesn't always work the way you want it to work, and I think it just, you're upset about it and everything, but, certainly talking to jail, who just said, right, we just have to accept it, and we'll look elsewhere.
So in the end, you just have to be pragmatic about it, take it on the chin. As you say, that's life, that's football.
Yeah, that's life, and I think you just sort of look and say, football club's the most important. There's obviously, I was getting older. There's probably better players about that the club want. So yeah, I just take it on the chin and say that's the way the business works. You're wanted as long as you stay, or they think that you're good enough to do what they want in terms of how they want to play. They're going to have offers, from other clubs for players. You know how it works. I think people talk all the time and say, "Oh, I'd like to play for that club," or "Yeah, I'm available." So it's just part and parcel, isn't it? It's you can't stay, I think, forever at a club till it doesn't happen that much now, does it? Where you're at one club and you stay there for the whole of your career till you're absolutely finished. Good managers sense that we need to change. We need to get somebody better, if you like, if you want a better phrase. And that's the way it is. And I've learned that, at the time you weren't too happy about it, but going into coaching and having to do the same, where you've got to let players go, it's hard, but it's got to be done. Yeah. And it's how you do it as well. I think it's how you do it as well. I think it's one of them where you be honest with the player, you sit down with the player, talk to them, say we'll try and help you get you fixed up, but it just looks that your time has run out at this football club. If players are honest with themselves, they understand that. I understood it that they're going to get better players in, and you've seen the players that come in after I left. Wow, they took the club to the next level, and so you look at the manager and say he was right.
Were you aware all these years on that a young David Klaus, who of course now owns Derby, that you were his favourite player in his supporting days of the 1980s?
Only because every time I speak to him, he tells me. That's what he'll say to me all the time. "Oh, you are my favourite player." So no, I wasn't aware of it. No, but that was nice of him. And I'm delighted that he's took the club on and made it successful, or he will make it successful. I think I've had a few meetings with him over the last couple of years, and yeah, I think he's honest and, just desperate for the football club to be successful.
We'll talk briefly about going to Hungary because that's an interesting story in itself. Are you disappointed that link with Derby, considering all that time that you played, the goals that you scored, that the opportunity to coach has never come your way at Derby?
No, because I think when you're in football for any length of time, I think you understand what happens, how clubs work. It's not a case of the clubs and David, the owner, has to be tough and say this is what I want. Not I don't want to bring in some ex-players just because they're ex-players. I want to bring in people who are going to make the club successful, and you have to take that in the chin and you have to understand it. Consult can say, well, I played so many years for a football club, and I deserve to have a chance coaching. No, I never ever think like that. I just think that me personally, I'd love to go back in, and if it's with the first team, fantastic. But I'm happy to go work in the academies and try and pass on the experiences that I had to other players, and I've done it at other clubs. I quite enjoyed, and going out to Hungary as well.
Yeah, tell us about that. How did that come about?
That came about with Terry Robinson at Sheffield United. I got a phone call because obviously I played for Sheffield United and got on well with Terry. I got a phone call out of the blue a few years ago. He just asked me, "What are you up to?" I went, "Well, doing this and doing that." He went, "Do you want to do some coaching? Looked like we're going to buy a football club in Europe. Do you want to be involved?" I went, "Yeah, of course." Not knowing anything about it, went, had the meeting, said, "Right, there's your flight tomorrow. Can you fly out there and sort the football side out?" And that's what he said. Come sort the football side out. Not how to do it or who's in charge. Just so I landed in Budapest, got picked up, went to the ground, and obviously I didn't speak Hungarian, and walked into the football club, and straight away I've gone, this is going to be very, very difficult. One, I'm a foreigner. Two, I'm coming in and telling players what to do, that these people don't know who the hell I am. I just went in and didn't sort of do too much straight away, just try to organise the team a little bit better because they played different systems, and I had some young players, very, very good young players, I have to say, that were terrified about playing in the first team because of the way the club had fallen down and, sort of collapsed, because there used to be a fantastic club in there. They were massive, still are a massive football club, but they've just gone their own way. And they had young players in the team who supporters, a lot of supporters, just want the team to win. But at the same time, I found out straight away, the Hungarian Ferencváros supporters want the team to win, but only if they win by playing good football. It wasn't the case of, sometimes over here, you've seen teams didn't play well today, but we won the game, so that's okay, and supporters go away happy. Over there, you had to play football how they wanted you to play football and win. And I found that out more or less straight away. But I kept on the coach, not the manager, one of the coaches that was Hungarian, and I wanted him to work with me. And he was a very, very good coach, I have to say. And we just I sort of did what I would do in England, set my teams up and how I'd get players, to perform, get the best out of them. And we did that with a couple of young players. In fact, one of them got picked up and got his international career at under 21s, came to England for a little while, then went back and had a great career. And that lad was getting pushed out of the club because nobody thought he was good enough. And to be fair, I'm not saying it was down to me, it was just that we looked at it and said, change your position and we think you can do this. Sort of looked after him and made him be more confident in himself. And, he went on and played for his country. Fantastic. I thought the experience of going out to a foreign country, not learn, well, I did go to classes, learn the language, but it was a great experience.
You also worked alongside another former Derby legend, Colin Todd at Bradford City.
Yes. Well, all them stories I heard about Toddy, yeah, they were true. He was very, very similar to Peter Taylor. You know, Peter would, after a game, he would say to us, you know, after a game on a Saturday, loads of times he'd come in and say, right, see you next Thursday. And you go, what? What are we going to do about training? Oh, I don't want you in the club. We'll train Thursday. Sort of that kind of old-fashioned style. And Colin did a lot of that. He was good at times, but at times he was very much back in them days under Peter Taylor, where give them 4 or 5 days off. I don't think the players particularly enjoy stuff like that. I think they want to train. They want to make sure everything's properly done for the next game.
Briefly, once the involvement in football came to an end, and I know you don't want it to end, there was life in the real world of work.
Jill, my wife, says all the time, listen, somebody comes along in football, great, but, you know, in the time being, get yourself out and get yourself a job. I've done that a few times, worked at the airports, sending aircraft out and bring them back in. I quite enjoyed. I still do some coaching. I'm doing some coaching at Wallsend Boys, which is I think a famous youth team club where a lot of them superstars from Newcastle started at the time. I still train myself. I'll run 4 or 5 times a week. I was out this morning, you know, ran for 90 minutes, trying to keep myself fit. I would like to go back in and look after academies.
Bobby, great to talk to you. Some lovely stories along the way. And, we'll keep a lookout for you, hopefully returning into football.
I keep knocking on the door at Derby and saying, listen, if you're looking for somebody, I'll come and do the 18s or 21s or 16s. But, you know, that's just for a bit of fun. But, seriously, that's what I'm looking for, just to get back in. We'll see if it happens.
Bobby, thanks for joining us. What a story. Coming up in episode 12, former manager Phil Brown. Now that should be a good one. If you've missed any of our conversations so far, the likes of Phil G, Eric Steele, Craig Bryson, Roy McFarlane or Colin Todd, they're available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to RamsTrust and 7 Restaurant and Café Bar in Derby for supporting us. Located on Derby's Pride Park, 7 is the leading destination for all-day dining, artisan coffee and handcrafted cocktails. With a focus on quality, seasonal ingredients and a welcoming atmosphere, 7 is where the community comes together to relax, connect and celebrate.
Life After the Rams is a Backpass production.